There is a model in community health, which is the Dawa Dua model, wherein they say that you don't tell the person to choose between medical and non-medical, but you use an amalgamation.
From Canada word come out of the last year.
Oh.
Question around karma.
Well, interesting to know.
How?
Interesting.
Modern healing is what? Medicine, psychotherapy, all these are what constructs of the last 100, 200 years. But we know human civilization has existed for 10,000 years at least, right, sir? In the way that it has. So traditional healing then has a longer history.
That okay. From कहाँ से? अभी मैं भी भूल गई.
Come from there.
Okay, so
Hello and welcome to another edition of the JIPS podcast. I'm your host Bhaskar. Today we have a very interesting topic called traditional healing practices in psychiatric space. We're joined by Dr. Vasundhara Nair, who is an assistant professor at the Jindal Institute of Behavioral Sciences. Dr. Vasundhara, we're very happy and glad to have you here.
thank you so much.
And I think it's a really interesting topic. It's something that has interested me since I studied clinical psychology. Because I remember when I was doing my master's, something similar was spoken about, and we went to Kerala just to visit a temple called the Chotanakal temple, where they do the blood sacrifice and possession, etc., to deal with mental health illnesses. And it surprisingly works for a lot of people. So that was really fascinating because you're studying psychotherapy and then you're seeing others, like a ritual solve problems for people, and it's like a treatment which is quicker. So this is a really a lot of interest to me, and I'm sure it's a lot of interest to other people. So let's just start with at the beginning. What is a traditional healing practice and what does it target?
So, traditional healing as a concept essentially came because belief is a very important construct in not just Indian system but world over. So, when mental health conditions and the distress element sort of started increasing more, how do I go and where do I go to seek out care? And that is where traditional help seeking came in, and this is not a new concept, just like how you put it. It's been there since ages. So not everyone immediately goes to a clinician or a general physician. They would like to go because religion is a very important institution that is still prevalent. So I would go to the person whom I feel that will take away the distress from me. And that is how traditional healing practices came in. So irrespective of the religion of the person, the belief system of the person, it was majorly my social construct, what is the etiology that I'm associating to a condition, where is it coming from, what's the cause of this, and can this be just removed if I pray to someone, or is it an act of God, or is it witchcraft, or am I being possessed by someone? Those were the questions that came in where traditional healing.
In many ways, the moniker itself, traditional healing, is different from modern healing, right? Modern healing is what? Medicine, psychotherapy, all these are what constructs of the last 100, 200 years. But we know human civilization has existed for 10,000 years at least, right, sir? In the way that it has. So traditional healing then has a longer history.
Yeah.
What about evidence then? Is there evidence today in the scientific method and research-wise?
A lot of evidence actually comes from ethnographic literature, where people have gone into settings and understood how practices have happened. Like Chotanakal temple, now I come from Kerala, and when you study something and you see like your own, not just immediate family, but even the larger set of individuals who have that belief system, who take you to those temples saying that, see, this happens, and you see that in front of you, you cannot throw away what you observe there. I'm not trying to say that one is better than the other, but essentially what I'm trying to say is that is where, like, the medical and the non-medical explanations to the conditions came in. Now, I come from Kerala, and you are studying behavioral science, you're studying how you're working with families, you're working with your own clientele. And when you're explaining your own, not just immediate family, but even the cohort takes you to those temples, shows you the evidence in front, says that we are not telling that what you're saying is wrong, but this is also working. And what do you have to say for it? So I think that's where the major relevance of it came in, where the explanation, like taking back to the point that I was saying, distress. The entire division was, should I do it medically or non-medically, right? And that was where the divide was. I remember in my own, when I was doing my MPhil and then PhD, I used to have a lot of individuals to come and tell me that you're doing your work, but I'm going to also go and pray. But sometimes they also feel like a lot of conditions, say for example, schizophrenia is a condition that has been associated to the act of possession a lot. And they are like, no, it is because God has been angry. It has been because this person did not agree or did something wrong, and that is where it is coming. So I will go and do it, and everything is going to be fine.
Right. Okay. I want to sort of break this down in a more methodological manner, right? When we say traditional healing practices for mental health illnesses specifically, what are the types?
Okay. So A1 is merely like, I would not go first to a clinician. I would go and pray. From there, praying can be becoming an entire set of pujas itself, or it differs from obviously religion to religion. So the entire set of all the rituals, and sometimes it becomes a little distressing for the person because a lot of using of wands and using of hitting and everything happens, which becomes very traumatizing for the person. That is a very, I would say, dark side of traditional healing, which often has not shown a lot of any great importance. A is prayer, B is the possession itself. So the person gets possessed and the work towards it starts, where a lot of pujas and everything starts off.
Where does this possession happen?
So usually they say either at home, or sometimes they say that they were walking somewhere and the person, when they came back, they saw a change of behavior and the person was talking in a different tone or acting very differently.
So is it like out of control in the sense that, can I, if I'm someone suffering from a mental health issue, right? And I think that the traditional healing method is to go forward with, is there somewhere I can go and go through this entire process, or will it just happen to be random?
Well, there is not a lot of evidence to the statement that you said, that can it happen or no. Like, I cannot give you like evidence in that manner, but usually how they say is the person went for a walk and when they came back, there was a change, or they went to say someone's funeral and when they came back, they felt that the person who had passed away, the person started behaving like that. Sometimes it also happens that someone who is very dear to them, when they pass away, they again start speaking in that tone. The behavior changes irrespective of the age and gender.
What's happening to the person who's possessed?
Yes.
I want to know, how can someone get possessed? Like, what is that like? Because they go somewhere, right, for traditional healing.
Yeah. Okay.
And their family will take them somewhere, for instance. So say Chottanagar temple, right? If there's someone who's suffering from an illness, mental health illness, and then the family usually says, okay, let's go to the temple.
Yes.
There is this ceremony which will help.
Yeah.
And in that space, then is there like a priest who does some kind of ritualistic thing which makes this person feel like possessed?
So Chottanagar, how it happens is usually a person who's having the illness, most of the time either there is a very different, so the person stops speaking, a mutism can come in, or what happens sometimes is the person is, like I said, their actual personality and the current personality changes. So what they do is they bring the person there, and usually there'll be like more than 2 people. And there's a process that there are 2 parts of the temple. There's an upper part where the upper part and lower part are basically 2 sisters who are sitting there. And the belief is that you take 2 to 3 rounds around the upper part, you'll already start having a conversation, like the person who's possessed, the spirit, and the goddess. Okay, so no. So after that, the person tries to resist, and they usually run from there. Like I've seen in front, and they run down, and then they usually come back again. So I've seen, like, I still remember recently when I had gone and I saw, like, this person who had come along with his parents, and he was running down, and with all will, like literally pushing the person, goes down. Nobody comes to help. Nobody does any kind of force. They go down and they wait for the person to come back. The belief is that the other sister who's down is telling that, no, listen, you need to step outside. And then there is an entire good 10 to 14 days of ritual where they sit down, and the spirit then decides that, okay, I am going to leave. And that is where the nail or the doll, however the priest deems it appropriate, they themselves put it on the tree and they say that the release has happened.
Okay. So you have to be like sort of showing the symptoms and you've taken him.
Yes.
And then that sort of reduction
Yes.
happens in that.
Yes.
So this is very specific then.
Yeah.
Okay. So one we've said is prayer.
Yeah.
That if I pray, I feel like I will be healed.
Yes.
The second is we're saying, say something like possession or going to a
Yeah,
temple,
yeah,
ritualistic
yeah.
thing. Any other methods are there?
There are also people who tie things on hands, and they believe that, or they put like tika, and they believe that every time you have this, you're protected. So, those red threads, some people wear it on the neck, some people on the arms, or it's just a tika, and they feel, tavis kind of things as well, and they feel like, yes, the person is protected.
Now, the other questions. So these are larger methods. I'm sure like there is indigenous medicine is also
Yes,
a part of it,
yes.
right? Like they'll see you have a mixture of all of this
Yeah,
and your
yeah.
problem will go away. I know that there is also the concept of nazar, right? In North India. I don't know if it's South India, there, but nazar is basically someone has put an evil eye on you. And they do all sorts of things. I remember as a child, for me, they used to throw like rice, uncooked rice, and then chadu, because in the Northeast, that's the larger thing. And with jakris, and they'll throw all this and they'll say lots of chants, and the nazar goes away.
Good.
Right? Which is also a very important concept anyway. But I think what's more interesting as a psychologist for me is which are the illnesses or disorders where something like this is applicable, it works, or does it work for all of them?
Predominantly it's seen in psychotic conditions. A lot of evidence when you read up, it's on schizophrenia, delusions, hallucinations, and basically how can I, because that is how possession, the act of possession is
symptom itself
defined.
is-
Yes. And so the early signs, symptoms, and also schizophrenia is one of the oldest conditions which is having evidence even today. So yes, a lot of psychotic spectrum is where they speak about it predominantly.
And so, say something like the mood spectrum or neurocognitive spectrum, it doesn't work.
On epilepsy, there is literature.
Really?
Yeah. So because again, they feel like the person is possessed. How, you have the tonic seizures and you fall down, they feel like, oh, the person is possessed. But predominantly in these conditions, so mood conditions, sometimes they say that, oh, she went to that place and after that she's been upset. But again, it's more, I am praying or the group is praying together to ensure that the person is fine.
And that environment definitely does play a role, I think, with all the incense and all the burning and
Yeah.
fire. And
Yes.
I think all of that at some level in a very basic mind, brain area, I think that does play a role. What is your personal opinion about it? I would be very interested to know that.
Honestly, I think I would quote what I was taught by my consultants when I was doing my clinical training, where they say that don't ever throw away something that is so indigenous, that has been there for such a long time. If it has been there, there is a reason why it stayed. I go by, there is a model in community health, which is the Dawa Dua model, wherein they say that you don't tell the person to choose between medical and non-medical, but you use an amalgamation. What they did in that model was they went, worked with the priest and said that when the person is coming and reporting to you about their concerns, them or the family members, don't dismiss them. Tell them, okay, you're doing the necessary, but along with that, tell that, hey, listen, I have a friend of mine. He is also equally trying to help you. Would you mind going and listening and speaking to them, and they would help? And that model has actually shown a lot of success rate. So I think I never, when a person comes and tells me, oh, I came late to this, because I thought that was working. I never tell them
This
that,
as in
yeah, I'd be like, okay, but can we also do an amalgamation? Can you also ensure that we do therapy here as well while you continue doing the praying, but do not go into the extreme forms of that? That is usually the perspective with which I work.
I think that's excellent. The Dawa Dua model sounds nice. I think there's a lot of learning, and we really, as much as I love the scientific method and positivism as a philosophy, there are some things that it can't assess, unfortunately. Falsifiability only works till a certain degree, and we know for a fact that these methods show evidence. For some people it works, and for some people it doesn't work. And as long as it works for people, I think it has validity, in my opinion. Yeah.
Because it's not just one temple. I think there are many temples that speak about it.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think when we talk about today the Indian sciences and Indian behavioral sciences and the Indian schools of work, I think we should
Incorporate.
now we have Ayush and everything coming in, so I think we should not throw away things, rather use and respect it and carry on.
I know there was a time where people used to make fun of yoga, right? As being like, why are you sitting your body like this? And now look at where it has gotten. Same thing for meditation. Sure. Rechristened as mindfulness now. But yeah, thank you, Vasanth. This was really enlightening. Thank you everyone for listening in. I hope this was of interest to you. And we'll keep coming with more podcast topics. And you can like, share, subscribe. You can ask them to like, share, subscribe.
Please do. And please keep coming and watching. Thank you so much.
Thank you.